Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Wiggle Jiggles in the relationship advice subreddit. The post is titled, "My boyfriend told me he would break up with me if I got breast augmentation surgery. I have what is known as tuberous breasts, where during puberty the breast tissue doesn't develop as it should. The breasts develop droopy and the areolas are large and not proportional to the size of my breasts. My plastic surgeon has confirmed this is what it is and told me that if I wanted to correct it, surgery is the only option. The surgery would include releasing the constricted tissue and then an implant would be placed above the muscle. I am extremely insecure about my breasts and always have been because I know they don't look normal. I just want to be confident with my body and feel sexy when I take my shirt off. I mentioned this procedure to my boyfriend and he immediately shot it down. He says he doesn't want a girl with fake boobs. He won't even listen to me when I tell him how gross my breasts make me feel. I 100% plan on going through with the surgery. I told my doctor up front that I did not want large breasts, just full breasts, and he told me that was absolutely achievable. My boyfriend still does not agree. My appointment is in April, the day before mine and my boyfriend's anniversary, and 3 days after my 22nd birthday. Please tell me if I'm doing the right thing. Is there any way to explain to him how this makes me feel? Any advice is appreciated." Update. About a year ago, I was having trouble making the decision to correct a breast deformity called tuberous breasts because my boyfriend told me he didn't want me to get it done. A lot of comments were so sweet and encouraging. I want to thank you all for the kind words. Implicit Empiricism said, "Nothing to do with OP, but when I was in medical school, it was described as tubular breasts. Now I wonder if it was when TMNT-age doctors filled up the attending population that the nomenclature switched to tuberous instead of tubular." Alicia said, "There is something about a man with his upper half covered in ink being breakup level judgmental about his girlfriend's choice of body modifications that really doesn't sit well with me. I feel like the fact it was a reconstructive surgery just pushed the problem down the road until the next time she makes a choice he doesn't like." To this, Stantler Queen said, "Yeah, her saying he's just not open-minded was a bit of a red flag for me. I'm glad she's happy and hopefully he'll mature as he gets older, but his behavior was controlling and unsupportive." This second post was made in the Name Nerd subreddit by a user named Rope Psychological. The post is titled, "Wife wants to name our twins Romeo and Juliet. My wife is a huge Shakespeare fan and she loves the idea of naming the twins Romeo and Juliet. I'm against it. I can't get over the idea of naming our kids after a fictional couple who die. I do really like the name Juliet. I even suggested that if we go with Juliet, maybe we could name our son Tybalt after Juliet's cousin. She insists that if we use Juliet, we have to use Romeo. I'll admit Romeo and Juliet is one of the only Shakespeare plays I've read, but I've tried to look online for some other Shakespearean sibling names we could use, like Ophelia and Laertes from Hamlet, or Claudio and Isabella from Much Ado About Nothing. She hasn't liked any of them because either their source isn't serious enough or the names aren't recognizable or famous as Shakespearean. She's really stuck on this. On their own, I think the names are lovely, but I don't think they work for twins. Is there a way I can convince her this is a bad idea, or does anyone have other Shakespearean name suggestions that might win her over? I am not sure if I'm overthinking the meaning behind the names and being weird about it, but I can't talk with anyone about this because she wants the twins' names to be a surprise." Update. Thanks for all the comments and name suggestions. I didn't want to speak badly about my wife, but yes, I am well aware of how deranged it is to name a pair of siblings after a fictional couple, and I was too much of a coward to bring up the incest thing in my original post. In defense of my wife, her pregnancy has been very hard on her. It's her first, and naming the kids is the only thing she seemed happy about these days. For context, she's seen the Romeo and Juliet play in person and is an avid reader of plays in general, but she's always liked Shakespeare most because those were the ones she studied. A few years ago, she even ran a Shakespeare club for kids at the local library. More recently, she was rereading the play and suggested we name the kids after the main characters. I was taken aback and told her we'd sleep on it, but the following day, it was all she'd talk about and she was so happy I didn't have the heart to talk her out of it. She became more and more fixated on it as the weeks went on. After making this post, I asked her again why it had to be these two names. She told me she always liked symbolic meanings and grand declarations of love, and she wanted that sort of bond to carry over to the kids in a family sense. She also mentioned that out of all the plays she'd read, Romeo and Juliet was the most iconic, that people would be able to recognize them, and that it would make it easier to talk to other parents if they asked why the kids were named Romeo and Juliet. I sat on this for a few days, and honestly, it felt like I didn't know her. I pray this is her pregnancy brain talking, but this isn't her. She's always been a romantic and fixates on trends and ideas, but this is just weird. Yesterday, I finally told her point blank that we were not naming our kids after such a famous couple under any circumstances, and I showed her this thread. She refused to look at it and broke down. My wife asked me why I couldn't just let her have this. Some suggested she needed to hear how crazy she was from someone who wasn't me, so I told her best friend what was happening, and she was more horrified than I was, how I probably should have reacted. Her best friend came over after work, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I know they watched the 1968 movie version of Romeo and Juliet together, which I've been told has a sex scene. I think that snapped some sense into my wife. Her friend left a few hours ago, and my wife's been quiet, but she asked if we could look over the names I'd picked out again. Thanks again for all the comments. I think we both needed reality slapped into us, her from her delusion and me from my apparent lack of common sense. She's still dead set on something Shakespearean or theater related and somewhat matching, but now that her head is clearer, I hope we can pick something better. From the quick read of the comments I showed her, she did like the name Sebastian, but she's on the fence about Viola. I'll let her off the hook for now since she's so sick, but once we're back to normal life, I'm not letting her forget this happened. I'll update this again once we finally have names picked out. Final update. I wanted to write a quick final update as it's been a few months and everything has calmed down. My wife had the babies last month, they're both healthy and we're both exhausted. The names we ultimately chose are Sebastian Jacob and Juliet Elizabeth, inspired by Sebastian from Twelfth Night and Juliet from Romeo and Juliet, as well as Jacob and Elizabeth from the Jacobean and Elizabethan eras of theater when Shakespeare wrote. A big thank you to the person who suggested that. My wife loved it. We had the twins at home for a few weeks before we named them. My wife was finally able to see them as our children, rather than extensions of herself to advertise her hobbies, hence the separate but still Shakespeare-themed names, which hopefully won't be too obvious. My wife's best friend will be their godmother as a thank you for her support and reality checks throughout everything. And finally, a big thank you to everyone here for your name suggestions and advice. It helped more than you'll know. Life of Joy Seal said, all craziness aside, I would think a huge Shakespeare fan would not pick the most basic names like Romeo and Juliet. To this comment, Jay Ensville said, when he said she studied Shakespeare, I was assuming she studied him in college, but the further I read, I realized it was just a hyperfixation. Peter09 said, smart friend they have. Good decisions in the end because it could have been a lot worse. Worldbound said, hey, the kids ended up with uncommon but decent names that don't scream doomed teenage romantic suicide plot. Sanity has prevailed for these kids. If somebody isn't a Shakespeare aficionado, the names still work perfectly fine. If they are a fan of the Bard, the names are a nice homage. Fandom names should be able to stand on their own. Baby Daenerys is going to hate her name and probably hate the books and TV show as soon as she is old enough to understand what it is. Baby Arya or Baby Jon have some plausible deniability about their name origin if they want it. This final post was made in the AITA subreddit by a user named Total Dingo. The post is titled, I secretly cheated on our vegetarian diet that my wife made our family do. I want to start by saying I love my family and wife, and I have never been the type to do anything like this before. 12 months ago, my wife converted to a new religion, which included her giving up eating meat. The whole family, me and our 2 young boys, were supportive of this, and we held a vegetarian-only dinner that night as a little sign of support. Life continued for another 8 months, basically unchanged. The boys and I ate meat, and my wife did not. However, things started to change around the 8 to 10 month mark. Basically, along with not eating meat, my wife no longer wanted to be around it. This wasn't the only thing. Things continued to progress. My wife started to replace things in the house with substitutes. First, the pork in the house was swapped out for jackfruit, eggs were swapped out for substitutes like Just Egg, shirts were only bought from clean brands like plant-based clothing, and deodorants were swapped out for deodorant pills like Go Scentless. You get the idea. To say this was creating a rift would be an understatement, and eventually I brought it up to my wife that while we 100% support her decisions around these things, I didn't think it should change things for the boys and me. My wife argued that her values had changed, that being around some of this stuff was really hard for her, and she wanted us to support her. For the next 2 to 3 months, the house was a place of pretty high tension. It had gotten so bad that the boys had friends bringing them meat from their houses since it was now completely gone from ours. Anyway, about a week ago, my wife went away on a few day-long business trip, meaning I was watching the boys Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Basically, and I'm a bit ashamed to type this out, the boys and I mostly ate meat, basically every chance we got. This was all fine and dandy. The boys and I had a great time, until my wife returned home and it somehow slipped out what we had done. I have never seen her so disappointed in us. After putting the boys to bed, we argued for hours about how I was setting a poor example for the boys, that I should respect the decisions made by my wife, even if they're tough and inconvenient. It's hard to argue back because I can see her side, but it boils down simply to the fact that I don't want to be vegetarian or vegan, and neither do the boys. Update. After my and our post went crazy, my wife and I basically sat down and tried to talk everything out, using the comments as a guide. After hours and hours of debating and about a week of going back and forth, the final place we came to is somewhat hard to put into written words. But basically, the boys should be able to live how they want, as they didn't make a decision to be part of this family. But I have chosen to be part of this family and be with my wife. If I can't meet my wife and her values, I should decide if I actually want to continue to be a part of this family. So basically, the boys are off the hook until they get a bit older and are able to make decisions at this level on their own. But in order to continue being with my wife, I need to sacrifice and meet her where her values are. I know Reddit doesn't want to hear this, but I'm willing to make a sacrifice like this to keep my family together and allow the boys to have their freedom. When I wrote the original post, all I cared about was my boys' ability to choose their own lifestyle, whether that be the one we have or some crazy lifestyle that they want. And I think I've gotten us to that place now. I don't use Reddit much, but I'll check back within a month or two and let everyone know how we're doing. I think we finally found a path forward. Crazy for Swayze said, I don't see any way this doesn't end in divorce. He is either getting divorced now or is going to let the resentment build until he snaps and then gets a divorce. Tigress92 said, those last commenters are spot on. The wife unilaterally changed her mind, is unwilling to compromise, makes demands, and uses emotional blackmail to enforce those demands. I hope OP comes to his senses soon and chooses divorce. Honestly though, the wife is awful here. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and thank you also to partner of the channel, GamerSupps. Use code DLAM to support the channel and get 10% off of your purchase, link in the description. I'm sure many of you like me have a hankering for daily caffeine, so go check them out. Lately, I've been a big fan of Titty Milk and Acid Rain, but they've got dozens of other flavors for y'all to try out. Anyway, thanks again for reaching the end, and I hope you all have an amazing passage of the next 24 hours.